Hello everyone, my name is Preeti and this course is mainly about full stack development. I have a total working experience of 8 plus years and I have been working mainly as a full stack developer where I have been catering to backend requirements as well as front end requirements. So it mainly makes up as full stack developers. So in this session, what we are going to understand is exactly what is full stack development, what all parameter or aspects are supposed to be considered when you actually speak about full stack development. What are the roles and responsibilities of a full stack developer? Who is a full stack developer? To what extent are you supposed to know a technology to be able to look for a role as a full stack developer? So, without any delay, let's actually take a look at what is full stack development. So, as you can see on my screen, um, a full stack developer is mainly a technical person who has the potential to work on both front end as well as back end of any given software application. So how it actually works is, I'm sure majority of y'all must already be aware of what is an application mainly made up of. It is mainly made up of front end technology, a front end, a back end, and a database, which is always supposed to be connected to the application in case there is any transactional database or if in case there is a dynamic database. Otherwise, you can always also work with static data, right? But when you speak about web applications, majority of the applications are, when you call it an application, it has to be mainly connected to a dynamic database, right? Otherwise it becomes a static website. So that is the difference. Now, as you can see on my screen, there is something known as front end, there's something known as back end, and there is database. Full stack development is mainly a mixture of all these three aspects or parameters. Now, the developer who is supposed to be working as a full stack developer has to possess a deep understanding of technologies that are used to implement different components and layers in a software product. So just like front end is mainly accounted as presentation layer, right? Because that is something that a user sees, that is something that the user will be able to acknowledge, that is something that the user will actually be able to communicate with or interact with, right? So that is where it is known as presentation layer, the layer that deals with the front end part of the application and user interface and so on and so forth, right? Then comes the backend, as you can see here. This backend is nothing but it is something that stores the business logic of your application. It is also known as the business logic layer of your application because it deals with backend part of the application, which is data validation, connectivity between the user interface and also the web. So that is why it is more or less known as backend because it is not directly visible to a user. It is always at the backend and it is doing a lot of data processing. It is controlling all the logic that you have written on your backend to be able to validate the data, to be able to pass the data successfully, and to always be able to send you a response in the form of data to your front end. All right. So that is our backend. Then comes database, which you are able to see very well here, right? Database layer is nothing but it is a layer that deals with the database connectivity of the application's front end. All right. So a user, just like backend, a user will never have access to your database. The user should never have actually access to your database because the user is only going to see the front end. The user is going to do a button click. That button is supposed to perform some operations, right? That operation is written in the backend. The result of that operation, which is actually manipulating the data. For example, if you have put some of your credentials or some of your details on a particular page, to be able to take that data and then store it somewhere, so that later on you can very well retrieve it, so that later on you can play with it, you can see it. You, if you further want to manipulate it, update it, you can always be able to do that, right? So that is where database as an application, database comes into play in an application, and it is a very very important part of an application. You cannot ignore database from a application, right? As long as you are dealing with, as I mentioned earlier, a dynamic application. All right. Now, as I have mentioned, these three are the main components of any given application on the web, right? When it comes to web or mobile or any other type of application, yes, these three components or these three um, modules form the main part of your application. They have to be present in any given application. All right. So this is what is full stack development. So being a full stack developer obviously does not mean that you should be mastered in all these aspects. It is not that, but instead it means that a full stack development professional should know how to work on the client as well on the server side, and what's happening in the application when a person is developing it. So your roles and responsibilities when it comes to full stack differs than working only as a software developer, because a software developer will mainly be pushed into front end direction or back end direction, one thing that you are good at. But there are very few full stack developers who are actually able to code in the front end, who are actually able to code in the back end, and obviously know in and out of their database. So that is where full stack comes into picture. It is mainly a combination, and it is mainly an the architecture entire, which is being currently shown on my screen, is more or less what is comprised of full stack development. All right. Now let's move to our next slide, which, as you can see, this is a little bit more descriptive form of full stack, which I have tried to showcase here, right? This is mainly into I would say a little bit of nitty-gritties of full stack, because what I'm showing here is there can be different technologies when it comes to front end, when it comes to back end, when it comes to database, right? So here I have actually jotted down a couple of front end technologies such as Angular. This A that you are able to see here, this is Angular. Then comes Vue.js, then comes React, right? So these are the different JavaScript applications which help you in framing your front end. You can obviously take a call, whichever technology works best for you. In this session, in this course, we are going to be learning about various technologies, of course, but we are going to be focused on making it one technology at a time in that particular domain. For example, in front end, we are going to be dealing with Angular. All right. So just like front end, then comes back end. Now, in backend also, as you can see, I have jotted down PHP, then comes Python, then comes Java. All these are brilliant backend technologies to be able to work with, right? All of them cater to different kind of requirements. For example, uh, Java is always preferred for high scale applications, because it is at the end of the day easy to pick up. It is very easy to code. Similarly, when PHP is also preferred when it comes to a dynamic application, just like Python. Python is more of a scripting language, and it is definitely useful, but it can be useful along with another framework such as Django or Flask or any such web framework. We will definitely be learning more and more about these, but let's not jump the gun to a particular technology right now. I'm just going to give a little bit of brief about all of them, so that it helps you build up your mind about full stack course and full stack development in general. All right. Then, as you can see, this database. All right. This database has MySQL. Then this database also has different types of data such as PostgreSQL. This, if you see, is Postgres, then comes MySQL. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, these are different types of technologies that can be used to cater exactly the same thing. So MySQL acts as a database engine similar to PostgreSQL. There is nothing that PostgreSQL can do or cannot do that MySQL can. All right. So all of these technologies are at par of each other. None of them are actually, none of them are actually behind another one. But as I mentioned earlier, each one of them have their own purpose. So we are going to be focusing on these purposes, and we are going to learn each and every aspect of these technologies. Of course, as I had mentioned earlier, you need not know all of them, but to be able to call yourself a full stack developer, it's important that you know at least one of them from all of these, right? I mean, one in each domain. For example, from in the front end, of course, it's good to know React and Angular both, definitely very good. But to be able to call yourself a full stack dev, you are supposed to know Angular, and you're supposed to know Java or Python really well. Then you're supposed to know MySQL, and of course, one of the cloud vendors. Now, cloud vendors is something that we will be doing an overview with. Let's not get into a complete cloud architecture because that will be a complete course altogether, right? So we are going to be focusing on complete hands-on full stack development in this course. All right. Now, let me just get to the main point. The main point that we are going to be learning in this course is going to be mean stack. Now, as you can see, mean is a short form of actual full stack architecture. Mean stands for MongoDB, ExpressJS is the E, A is for AngularJS, and N is for Node.js stack. Now, what is each one of them and what do they exactly cater to? So, MongoDB is the DB database. There are different types of database. For example, relational database and non-relational database. MongoDB stands for the non-relational side of it. We can also use, so when we actually do the hands-on session, we will be learning about both connecting MongoDB as well as MySQL, because MongoDB is non-relational database versus MySQL is a relational database. As mentioned in the curriculum, we are also going to be learning about what is the main difference between a relational database and a non-relational database. Of course, there has to be some kind of difference and some kind of change in both these technologies, otherwise they would not exist, right? So what we are going to be learning is connectivity with MongoDB, and we will also see how to store data in MySQL and obviously use it in our application. As I had mentioned earlier, all of the technologies cater to different kind of requirements. All right. Now comes ExpressJS. ExpressJS, as it's just written down, web dev framework for Node.js. It is something that works hand in hand with Node.js. Node.js is basically going to be the part of, let me just show that to you. Node.js will form in the backend side of it. All right. So Node.js is going to be our backend technology that we are going to be learning. Then comes Angular. As I had already shown in the previous slides, we are going to be dealing with Angular for the front end part. Of course, in Angular, there will be HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and all of those things that we are going to be learning. But those are going to be at a basic level compared to Angular. Angular, we will try to learn as much as possible, even if it goes up to advanced level. All right. Then comes Express, as I was mentioning. Express works hands in hand with Node.js. Node.js is something where we are going to be writing all our business logic. It is going to have all our APIs. We will also see how to run a Node server. So Node in itself acts as a load balancer as well as an application engine, a backend application engine. Some people also use Node.js on the front end, although we in our curriculum are going to be looking at Node.js as a backend technology. All right. So Node.js is something that has different kind of programming. What do I mean by that? It has something known as asynchronous programming, which is something that Node.js excels in. Whenever your application is such where, of course, point number one, that you do have some dynamic data to be able to share one from one platform to another, is where Node.js will come into picture. It is going to be helpful when we actually implement one or two APIs in Node.js. Of course, that is going to make a lot of difference to us, to our application. We will see how the connection between Express, so all your routes and all your APIs are going to be written in Node.js, but they are actually going to call Express.js, all right? Because Node.js doesn't have any concept of APIs. It is always Express that enables it to be able to handle within Node.js, all right? So what we are going to do is we are going to host an API using Express.js and Node.js. Then what we will do is we will try to connect this API to our MongoDB or any other database that we take a call that we will be using. Mostly it will be both MongoDB as well as MySQL. We will try to connect both of these databases with Node and Express to one single API that we are going to write, and that API is actually going to get called by Angular, which is going to be our front end. For all the UI related, that is user interface, for example, a button, the color of the button, the font of the button, the placement of the button, how our page or web page will actually look. We will also, as I mentioned, be using HTML and CSS and Bootstrap to be able to design a good looking screen and to be able to actually integrate Angular on top of it. So the layer comes as HTML, CSS, Bootstrap. These are mostly combo. You cannot just work without CSS or an HTML because that is not something that is practiced in the industry, all right? So the HTML, CSS and Bootstrap forms one layer. Then on top of it sits Angular. Then on top of it is Express, which is combined with Node.js, and finally the database, so that you never have direct access to your database. As you are seeing with this session, I am using a lot of references when it comes to a database or when it comes to APIs and all of these things. These are mainly industry standards. So by the end of this session, of course, we are going to be learning about how to actually develop an application, and where all these aspects of an application, that is backend, front end, and the server and the database, everything is literally handled by one person, that is you. And you will be actually able to see how an application works in the background. If you are a front end, you will not majorly have an idea about how does an API work, right? Because you are always giving a request and you are expecting a response from that API, knowingly or unknowingly, never bothered about actually getting into the nitty-gritties of how does this connection actually happen, where my data manipulation is happening, where my data view, read, select is happening, and also you are able to update this data or add this data within your database. So all this logic that is written in the backend and at the same time called and presented in the front end, all of these logics is an essential part of full stack development, all right? So what we will start off with in this entire course is literally from scratch, right from actually installing each one of this MongoDB, Express, Angular and Node, installation of all of them on our local machine, to actually developing components and services in Angular. First, we'll understand what are components and services in Angular, because obviously the concept is a little different compared to any other front-end technology. So first we will understand what are components and services and scope and view, etc., etc. in Angular. Then we will move to actually Express.js, and we will develop route using Express.js, we will define that route within Node.js, and finally we will make a connection to our database. As mentioned, that database can be MongoDB or can be MySQL. That is the call that we will take later while actually developing the application. So this is more or less about the full stack development on and the entire architecture that we will be learning going forward in this curriculum, right? Now, just to give a little bit brief about, as a full stack developer, I have already mentioned how your roles and responsibilities are going to be designing the front end and also working on the back end, right? So along with knowing this, it is also essential that you are able to take care of your server, of your database in your application, right? That also comes under the radar of a full stack developer. You can consider a full stack developer as a one man army, like literally from plotting plans to putting it into action. The whole development process is your forte, has to be your forte, right? You have to be armed with expertise over multiple coding languages, frameworks, platforms, and that is supposed to be your asset into this project, into any given project for that matter, right? Now, full stack developer roles are very much in the market. If you are looking into any of the any of full stack architectural roles, it is definitely going to include all of this, and it is also going to include a little bit on top, such as HTML, CSS, and all the other technologies that I have recently spoken about, right? So that is something that is also expected out of you, and this is what is full stack developer. So working experience in CSS, JavaScript, etc, etc, then the web frameworks like Node.js, Angular, Django for that matter. We are not going to be covering Django in this, but yes, Django is also one of the frameworks. Just like Express and Node.js, Django is something that works with Python. So Python has something known as Django. Node.js has something known as Express. All right. So then comes the ability to bring together several loosely held components to build applications. So front end is a different component compared to the back end, right? So you have to be the one person who is going to bring all of these under one umbrella, right? Then of course, to be able to think the strategy, business point, to be able to drive these solutions. All right. So there are several demands in the market when it comes to full stack developer role. They are getting paid quite well compared to you being only a full front end developer or a back end developer. Being a full stack developer has its own perks. One of the perks is the pay. The pay is definitely higher. Similarly, of course, when it comes to you actually being able to, if you have an idea for yourself, you are not going to be looking for another partner. You are just like I mentioned, one person army. You can take care of all of this. You can take care of the entire architecture of your software all alone, right? So that is where full stack developer comes into picture. So this was a quick brief about what is full stack development, what are the different components involved in full stack development, what all do you actually need to know in terms of full stack to be able to actually become a full stack developer. All right. So I think more or less all these aspects that are developed or that are required in a full stack development is covered in this session. Now we will go and explore the nitty-gritties and each of these concepts of all the technologies that you can see right now on my screen. We are going to explore each and every one of them one by one. So I hope that you enjoyed this session. Please join this full stack development course. Thank you so much.